What's up, everybody? This is Sam Shady with Shady Sports Network, and today I just wanted to ask you for a huge favor. We're growing very quickly thanks to all your guys' help, but I've got a little request for you guys, and all that is to hit that like button. So basically, the way the YouTube algorithm works is if they don't see an asinine amount of likes on each video, we will not grow. We will not be pushed out to new viewers. So without your help hitting that like button, subscribing, clicking those notifications, making sure you hit like on all these videos, we can't grow as quickly as we'd like to. So with that being said, please help support Shady Sports Network today by hitting that like button. It's completely free, doesn't cost you a thing, and in turn, it helps us continue creating great content for you to consume in the future. All right. Well, I'm particularly excited for this one. It's kind of been a little while in the works, I guess. This is head coach Dave Mogensen of the Iowa Barnstormers in the IFL. How you doing this morning, Coach?
I'm doing good.
First of all, I wanted to congratulate you on your first season with the Barnstormers. It seemed that it went pretty well. I mean, you guys ended up with a 9-8 record and ended up in the playoffs in year one. How do you feel so far about your performance?
Yeah, I think it can be considered a successful season, making the playoffs in our first year. It's the fifth year in the row the Barnstormers have made the playoffs, so it's something that's kind of a standard over there now after kind of a rough start when they first came back earlier in AF2 and all that stuff. But I think it was a successful season. You know, we like to think that we maybe dropped a couple games that we should have won. Would have liked to have about 4 minutes back from that playoff game against Frisco where things got a little wild in that second quarter. But, you know, all things considered, I think it was a successful year with the kind of roster we put together. And it was kind of a rebuilding kind of year, a reset year. And we still were able to lay a good foundation and make the playoffs.
Sorry about that. I definitely think you guys are headed in the right direction. At what age did you ultimately develop a love for football?
It was kind of later, I think. We weren't a football family. We grew up in Chicago, so Bears fans in the 80s when they were good. So it was, cool, but we weren't like fanatics or anything. I didn't go to any football games as a kid. We're a hockey family. My dad played a lot of hockey as a kid and professionally and stuff like that. So my dad was a big hockey guy, and that was our love. We were Blackhawks fans and hockey guys and going to watch my dad play at different leagues and things like that. So we were hockey, except I was a really bad hockey player. I was a really bad athlete as a young kid. And it wasn't until I didn't play football until seventh grade. That was flag. So, I was, other than recess and stuff, didn't play football. Seventh grade was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Eighth grade, I got pretty good. That's when I got my growth spurt and started becoming athletic. And high school, freshman year of high school is first time I played tackle football. And that's when it kind of connected to me. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. I like football. And that's where my love of football kind of developed, and played in high school and played in college. And then I'm like, spent 1 year not doing anything with football. And I'm like, this sucks. So let me try this coaching thing. And that started that path.
That's amazing. I mean, you kind of hopped right into it. I didn't get a whole lot into your beginning of your coaching career because there was just so much to talk about when you got into the IFL. So I started in 2018 with your time with the Green Bay Blizzard. You joined as the offensive coordinator under head coach Chris Williams. The team starts out kind of rough, 0-5. And ultimately, Williams is replaced by head coach Corey Robertson. What was it like going through this transition with the franchise in your first year?
So I actually wasn't with Chris Williams. I wasn't affiliated with the team when Chris was there.
Oh, really?
I moved to Green Bay. So I came in with Corey Robertson. So Corey and Coach Robertson and I go back a long time. I coached him his second to last year playing way back. That would have been 2009. In the Continental Indoor Football League, the old CIFL doesn't exist anymore. So I coached him. Granted, he's a defensive guy. I was an offensive guy, so I didn't really coach him too much, but he was on the team. And that's how we first met, and we just stayed in touch. So in 2018, I had moved into the Green Bay area, and I had talked to Chris Williams, but he wasn't looking for staff people. And then obviously they started how they started. And they made a change and they brought Corey in. And then Corey called me and said, "Hey, what are you doing? I need some help with this." So I came aboard after the transition. So you can't put that 1-5 on top of me.
Gotcha.
It was interesting. It was my first time in the IFL. I coached 4 years of arena before that, so indoor arena football. But I hadn't been the guy that kind of travels around the country, so I only coached when I was local to where I lived. So, as you know, it can be a little fickle with teams coming and going. So I coached for some teams back in the past that didn't stick around very long. And so it was just an opportunity to be with a stable franchise and back and at the highest level of indoor, near the highest level. AFL was still kicking a little bit at that time, but it was an interesting transition. It was definitely a lot more intense, a lot more pressure filled at the IFL level than it had been in the previous spots. So, but it was good. I think we laid some good foundation in 2018 and kind of turned around the fortunes of the franchise, and it was an exciting time period.
Absolutely. By the end of the 2018 season, you guys ended the season 2-12. So, like you said, don't put the 0-5 on you. So that means you ended 2-7.
Yeah.
Had ownership given you any assurances as to the status of your job and Corey Roberson's job at the time?
I think they were pretty happy with how things ended up in 2018. So we did only win 2 more. We were really competitive in a bunch of games. Even our last game of the year, that's when it kind of sticks out. We lost like 63-60 to Sioux Falls at their place to end the season. So we were really competitive the rest of the way. We only pulled out 2 more victories, but it was, they were getting blown out for years. I think Chris had only won like 5 games in 5 years or 4 years. So for us to grab 2, you followed the league enough to know that it's hard to build a roster and maintain a roster when you come into a 0-5, 0-6, 0-7. Nobody wants to come play for a team like that. So they were pretty excited for us to be able to build a roster from scratch for 2019. So I definitely think that Corey was told pretty quickly, like, "Hey, you're coming back and we're going to make you the full-time coach." And then it was just a matter of Corey and I, having a discussion to decide if I was coming back.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. Well, in 2019, you do ultimately come back to the Blizzard, and you guys have a complete turnaround. It ends up basically night and day. You end up in the playoffs with a 9-5 record. What do you believe led to such a drastic turnaround in such a short amount of time?
I think if you look at that staff, so Corey sometimes could get a bad rap, but I think Corey's a really, really good coach. If you look at they haven't had a ton of success since I left there, but again, they've been competitive. Their defense is always one of the best in the league. Corey does a really good job, but if you look at the staff from 2019's team, it was a 3-person staff. It was some side guys, but it was Corey as the head coach. I was there, and then Tom Manas was our offensive and defensive line coach. Tom Manas is the head coach of the Albany Empire the last 2 years. So you had a pretty outstanding coaching staff for 2019. And we were all there pretty early. I think Corey brought me back right away, and then I went out and reached out and hired Tom, or got Tom on board, and Corey hired Tom. So you had 3 guys who are pretty good football coaches with good pedigree, working on recruiting and game planning and all that stuff. And I think that was a big difference in 2019, maybe compared to the last couple of years. You got 3 guys on a staff that are all now head coaches at this level. So that makes a big difference.
Absolutely. Lot of respect for Corey Roberson, despite the fact that I have been a critic of his in the past. I mean, no ill will towards the man. I hope he turns it around and can find the playoffs this season and find the success that he deserves, because he is a pretty good coach for that.
Don't write any articles about me getting fired after this thing. So.
Oh man. Yeah, I definitely will not be. For the record, didn't have any inside information on that one or anything like that. It was just kind of following the trends with what Green Bay's done. And I mean, if anything, it just shows how much ownership must like Coach Roberson.
He's a good dude. He's a good dude. So sometimes he gets a bad rap, but he's a good guy. He means really well. He puts his heart and soul into his players. So, hopefully they have a better year this year. I mean, I think we'll see what the schedule comes out. I mean, I'd love for them to go 14-2 and lose 2 games to the Barnstormers, but that would be great for them.
Absolutely. Lots of great playmakers on that team. I mean, I'm a big fan of quarterback Jack Sheehan. There's also Tim Whitfield, who one of my favorites in the IFL. So lots of guys on that roster that are talented players. But back to your career and your players.
Sure.
So I noticed in the run game at that particular time, your unit ran the ball fewer times than 2018, however, produced more yards per carry and nearly twice as many touchdowns. How were you able to make tweaks to your scheme or play calling to facilitate this large of a leap?
I think the biggest difference between 2018 and 2019, for me, that was my first time in the IFL. And in the CIFL, where I coached previously, and I messed around in AF2 a little bit, that was those are pass heavy leagues. Those were not mobile quarterback leagues. They were old school arena style, like what the NAL still plays. So that was that style, and running quarterbacks just weren't really something that you had to worry about or think about. Obviously, when I left there and went to college, that was right at the beginning of the whole mobile quarterback and zone reads and RPOs and stuff. So it was important. So I had experience in that and worked with that, but I didn't bring it to the IFL game in 2018. I kind of brought what I did before, and we had a pretty good quarterback that year. We had Brian Hicks, who was like basically a rookie, ended up having a lot of success in the NAL and messed around with Louisville in the IFL last year. But so he was a good quarterback, but he's not a mobile guy. He's built for that other arena style, so I think he had that success in the NAL, a very accurate passer and stuff. So in 2019, it was a goal of ours to go out and get a mobile guy. We felt like the best teams in the IFL had quarterbacks that could move. So we got Lenoris Footman out of Alcorn State, and that just added that extra dimension we didn't have in 2018, having a quarterback that was a threat to run. So I think if you look at all the best quarterbacks in the IFL, the teams with the best records have good quarterbacks. Those quarterbacks, in addition to be able to make throws, you got to be able to throw the ball still. There's guys in the IFL who don't have success because they could just run. But if you can throw and you have that threat of run, that's how you can have more offensive success in the league. So that was a big difference from 2018 to 2019. We had Footman. Footman had a really great rookie year. He lost out to Tommy Armstrong for rookie of the year, but he was a really dynamic player that helped us do a lot of stuff on offense.
Absolutely. So in 2020, as we all know, the IFL was forced to shut down for the season due to COVID. I'm kind of curious, how did they inform you guys as coaches that this was coming?
It just kind of, everybody was going through what the world was like, and we didn't really know. If you remember how it started in early 2020, it was like all memes and everybody was a big joke and everything. And then it started getting serious, and it was kind of just wild. You just said, hey, they might not have a season, and then all of a sudden they're not having a season. And once you started seeing everything else fall, I think the IFL actually fell after like baseball and NBA and stuff. So IFL hung out for a long time to try to make it work. But once you start seeing major professional leagues go down, you knew it was a matter of time before everything went down. And, we didn't really know, and it probably wasn't maybe the greatest decision to do all that stuff that happened, but knowing what we know now. But at the time, we had to, I think it made sense to be safe and figure out what the heck's going on in the world.
Agreed. How did you spend that 2020 season without the IFL to coach in at the time?
So I just worked, at this level. It's not great pay at this level, so we aren't getting NFL-like contracts to coach. So as an assistant, I know some guys don't have to do other things, but I always had a full-time job, which is why I always coached around where I lived. I never went up and traveled and coached. So I just worked my regular job, and that was that.
Gotcha. In 2021, you were a part of one of the most successful football teams in the last 5 years, regardless of what league you're talking about, the Albany Empire. Talk to me about how you ended up at the Empire last season.
Yeah, so I didn't really know what I was going to do in 2021. I had taken a new job. I moved out of Green Bay. I was probably not coming back to Green Bay for 2021. Actually, I wasn't. I was set on not coming back. Corey had went out and then replaced me when I told him I wasn't coming back. I just had a job opportunity and moved out of the area. So at that point, I was going to be quasi out of indoor football again, as I've done in the past. But there was a late change kind of due to what happened at the Iowa Barnstormers, as there was a late change in coaching for the Albany Empire. So Iowa Barnstormers needed a coach. Their coach left right before the season. They in turn go and hire Les Moss from Albany, who was the offensive coordinator, which really didn't cause any differences. But then shortly after that, Les went and hired Rob Keefe from Albany to work with him in Iowa, which left Albany with an open position, a month before their season started. My friend Tom Manas, who was with us in Green Bay in 2019, he and I have coached against each other in college before. It's where we first met. He had called me and said, "Hey, I'm going to interview for this Albany job." He was with the New Jersey Flight at the time. It's just their assistant head coach under Terry Foster. And he called me and he's like, "If I get the job, can you come out here?" And I said, "Well, we got to talk about what the numbers would be for me to get a leave from my job for 4 months to go do that." That was a shortened post-COVID season, so it was like only 10 games that 2021 season in the NAL. Tom got the job. We ended up thinking the best move for me would be to be in the front office, help him build the roster and recruit players and stuff like that. So that's really how I got back into it with Tom. He and I built that roster for 2021. The interesting thing about it is what we didn't know until he got the job. It happened pretty quickly. And then all of a sudden, like, hey, here's the guys you have signed. They only had 6 players signed for the 2021 season a month before the season would go. So I don't think those guys thought, because New York had some really crazy restrictions for COVID still at that time, and they didn't get lifted till a couple weeks before the season. So when Tom got hired, they had assurances they were going to get lifted. That's why they knew they were going to go forward with the season. But I think those other guys that were there probably assumed that New York just wasn't going to let them have a season. So you don't want to tie a kid down with a contract if you're not really going to play. So it was a lot of scrambling in 2021 to, at that point, rosters are pretty full. It's trying to find guys and get dudes. And we were able to put together a pretty good roster that obviously was championship caliber. So that was a cool run. That was a nice season.
That's amazing. I didn't realize it was that close to the season that you had joined Albany. That's crazy.
Literally, I'm calling guys to recruit. Normally, like I'm recruiting now for Iowa. And we report in March. You got some time to get your life in order. I'm calling guys and saying, hey, you're not signed anywhere. NFL hasn't offered you a contract. I need you in Albany in 2 weeks, kind of thing. Like, can you drop everything you're doing and come to Albany in 2 or 3 weeks? And that's kind of what it was. And it was wild. It was interesting. It's something I never had to do it like that. Now you have some level of that when you're in the middle of the season, right? Somebody gets hurt. Hey, I need you to come right now. Different story because guys are kind of expecting it. But to recruit guys out of the blue like that and, hey, man, drop everything you're doing, quit your job, whatever you're doing, and come to Albany in 2 weeks.
That's amazing. I mean, for fans watching, he already kind of mentioned this before, but the players are in the same situation the coaches are in at an assistant level. I mean, they're not making enough money to where they can just drop everything. They most likely have a job outside of football. And that's to build that kind of roster in that short amount of time. It's an amazing feat, quite honestly. What is it about the Empire that makes them, so good? You talked about the fact that their roster was basically completely turned over. Yet despite that fact, 2019, 2021, and now 2022 as well, they've won a championship each season.
I think they 2019, obviously Rob was there and Les, and they do a great job. They've had success everywhere they go. They just won the IFL championship together with Northern Arizona. So they have a formula. So I can't speak too much to that because I know in 2018, they had a pretty good year. I think they lost in the playoffs. So they were good that inaugural season back. And then 2019, they win the AFL, the last AFL championship. So I can't speak too much to what they did, but I know with Tom and what they're doing now in Albany, they got a really great ownership. Mike Corder is the main owner. They got a handful of guys that have a piece of it, but Mike does a great job of providing whatever coaches and players need to have success. And he understands that he's kind of doing a service for the community, and he's not in there. He's got successful businesses outside of that make money, and he's not in, trying to cut corners with the Empire to try to make a dollar. So he does whatever they need to do to have success. He gives Tom what he needs. They got a nice coaching staff, and we were able to get Damon Ware up there. He's been around the block in a couple different places, so he was available at the time. I think he was kind of planning on taking a little hiatus in 2021. And then I called him and said, "Hey, Damon, we need you, man, up in Albany. Let's get up there." So he's been a great there. Him and Tom 1-2 punch in Albany. So it's a matter of getting the resources, and then Tom and myself in 2021, and then this past year, Tom and Damon as well, of getting the right people up there. And I think that's the key, is identifying the right mix of talent. The NAL is a little more veteran heavy than the IFL. So, they have arguably the best indoor football player in the world, and Darius Prince, that makes life a lot easier for whoever's throwing the ball. Tommy Grady was there in 2021. Great player, fantastic player, great history. He's a little bit up in age, so it makes it easier to throw to a guy like that. Plus, in 2021, we just had a stacked roster. We had some veterans all over the place, kind of taking their last hurrah. But 2022, this past year, they had a lot more young guys. They had some of the rookies we brought in last year were second-year guys, but the quarterback was basically a rookie, had a couple games under his belt from 2021. So I think having the right veteran leadership and then mixing in the right rookies with the resources that they give them is what's their successful formula.
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. I mean, obviously you can't have a solid team without a solid foundation. I mean, you have to have the correct players and coaches to get you to where you want to go. Following the 2021 season, you ultimately get the call to replace yet another former Albany Empire coach in Les Moss that we just spoke about. He and Rob Keefe were the two architects of the 2019 championship, as we just spoke about. What was it like following a man like Coach Moss essentially into the same position, more or less, 2 seasons in a row?
Yeah, it's interesting how intertwined. I've talked to Coach on the phone a couple times just because of some roster stuff this past off season and things like that. But I've never actually met him, never met Rob, only hear about them, seen their success. Know they have a great track record, but it was an interesting deal. Iowa didn't come to me. I went to Iowa after talking to Tom, and I've had a lot of success as a coach in different stops. And I kind of just felt, COVID came through and it kind of changed the whole dynamic of the world, and it kind of makes you reevaluate what you're doing with your life. And I had a successful career on the side. I made good money, had a good career, worked a career path up. And I just felt like, if I'm going to maybe take a shot to be a professional coach full-time, this might be the shot that I could take. I wanted to be kind of centrally located to Wisconsin, where I was within driving distance. So Iowa, it was really just Green Bay or Iowa. I was actually probably going to go back to Green Bay in 2022. Corey and I had some pretty in-depth discussions. So had I not gotten the job in Iowa, I think that was what would happen. He hadn't made an offer yet. He was kind of waiting to see what was happening in Iowa. But our discussions were I'd probably go back there. At the time, I was still working for Tom. So I think it was a perfect storm of situations. I applied. Pretty extensive interview process. People probably don't know what the interview process is at this level. It was pretty extensive. So it was like a 4-interview deal. It was a phone interview, then a face-to-face, then another couple face-to-faces before I got the final offer. So it was a pretty intensive interview process. I know there was a lot of other people involved, so they interviewed a lot of people. And, the front office, the person leading the charge is Julie Pettit, our GM. And I think we just her and I had a lot of synergy in how we think about how a successful franchise should be run. And I think ultimately that's why I was chosen.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So we often talk about what draws a team to a coach, but I want to know what drew you to Iowa and what the Barnstormers offered you as a coach.
So as a indoor coach, there's things you look for. Like you want to have resources that you need. And I felt like the facilities there, what does a player look for? If you're doing things by the book and the way you're supposed to be doing it, when a player looks to come to a team, what does he look for? He looks for amenities. Where am I going to live? Where am I going to eat? What's my training facility look like? What's my stadium and locker room? What does all that look like? So they're going to look at that stuff. They're going to look at brand and exposure. What can you do for me? And then they're going to look at, obviously, scheme and the coach and your background and what have you done. So as a rookie head coach, I could lean on some of my offensive background, but nobody's seen me be a head coach at this level before. So that one's kind of thrown out the window, really. It's more of a trust thing. But I felt Iowa is one of the signature brands. Iowa Barnstormers are one, if not the signature brand, thanks to the Kurt Warner connection. Probably more random people in the world know who the Iowa Barnstormers are because of Kurt Warner than any other indoor franchise or arena franchise in history. So we have that for brand awareness and exposure. And the facilities at Iowa are really fantastic. So when I was able to see, here's where the guys live, here's our medical partners, here's our stadium, here's our other practice facilities. Teams like at our level don't always practice in our stadium, so we have to have all auxiliary practice facilities. So all that was really top-notch stuff. So I felt like, having a good connection with Julie and where the flow would be from a head coach and GM capacity and all the amenities and the exposure stuff, I'm like, I think you could build a successful team in Iowa. I saw Dixie, because Iowa was really bad before Dixie got there, and they were losing a lot of games every year. They just were not good. So I was able to coach against Iowa when I was at Green Bay when Dixie was there, and they were really successful. And it was, the crowd was into it. The fans were into it. It was loud. It's a great home field advantage. People are involved. So I knew it could be done. Obviously, they didn't play in 2020. 2021, they had, not a great year, a below 500 year, and they snuck into the playoffs. But I knew it could be done. And I just felt like it was kind of a perfect storm for me personally. So, they didn't offer me a lot. We're a small market franchise, so they didn't like blow my socks off with my salary or anything. But I felt like it was a chance to take a chance in life and step out and walk off the plank and say, I'm going to be a full-time professional football coach instead of just dabbling like I had been, and see what happens.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it seems like it's gone pretty well so far. And I mean, like I said before, you're trending in the right direction to have a lot of success for the rest of your head coaching career, I'd say.
Yeah, it's first year was good, but how this business works is, what have you done for me lately? So I think most people have worked past the first year, and we're really on to the second year. And what are we going to do? If you think back to my time in Green Bay, Corey was coach of the year in 2019. You probably would have had this same conversation with Corey after the 2019 season if you were doing this, and how great his trajectory is and how great everything's going to be. And then, you find out that it's not really easy to win at this level. It's hard. Winning in the IFL is really difficult. There are great players. The best players not playing in the NFL, CFL, or those couple extra leagues are playing in the indoor football league, top to bottom. So the roster's top to bottom. It's hard to get a first down in the league, let alone win the game. And the coaches are great. It's just really good football. So I wouldn't say there's any extra pressure like from ownership or from our GM to have another successful playoff season. But I feel the pressure. We put the pressure on ourselves that to transition now. We set a standard in year one of playoffs. Now year two, you have to beat that standard, right? So you got to get, if we get to the next round of the playoffs, or we get to a championship, or we, God willing, win a championship, that's really where we got to keep progressing and to get into the level. If you look at the two teams in our league that are year in and out the most successful, everybody knows who the Barnstormers are. But if you talk to people in the indoor football league, it's Sioux Falls, Arizona Rattlers, because they're always in the mix for a championship. So that's where we want to be, and that's what we're trying to get to.
I love that. I love how you put that. I mean, you definitely set the bar very high in year one. So yeah, expectations are high, and that's kind of the challenge you face as a head coach. I mean, sometimes your success can kind of be, an increase in pressure every season because you have to, top that success each and every year. But that seems to be something that you've been fairly good at. I mean, everywhere you go, you seem to improve the location by the time you end up moving on. And I mean, whether it was the college, the high school level, or in the IFL, we've already seen it here in your first stop as a head coach. I mean, is this something that you take pride in, rebuilding an organization in your image?
Yeah, I think, I don't think it's something that I just do well. I don't know if it's my leadership style. It's kind of been in my side career too. Like I was always, I'm a food service administrator is what I did for careers. So I was kind of like known as the fixer, like bring me in to a broken account and I'll fix it for you. So it's been something that's just in my blood. I don't know if it's my leadership style, but it just kind of happens. It's what I do. It's interesting. This is a kind of a funny story. We came into 2018 in Green Bay. We were 0 and whatever when we got there. The roster wasn't obviously good enough to compete in the IFL, and we were losing games right away. And it was pressure. Like, why are we not winning? Like, you're losing, especially for me, because I'm used to every other time I coached indoor, we were good. We were making the playoffs. We were doing well. So there was a lot of pressure. And Corey and I would just talk. We had some other coaches that ended up not coming back. Like, if we just started winning games, if we can just start winning games, it'll be less pressure. So then shoot to 2019 and we're winning games, and not only is it not less pressure, it's actually more pressure in 2019. Every time you win a game, now the expectation is, well, you're winning. You won 2 or 3 in a row. You need to keep winning. So I think we went on a 5 or 6 game winning streak. Then we lost the game in Nebraska, and everybody was like, you guys lost? What is going on here? You guys just won 6 in a row. So to my point from before, like the more you win, the more the pressure kind of ramps up. And it's just been kind of a coincidence that I've gone into places and been able to make them better. I don't think Iowa was broken by any means, and they made the playoffs in 2021. I don't think it was a great fit. Part of getting into a spot is finding a right fit all around. I don't necessarily think Les and Rob maybe were a great fit for this small market here, like how it is. So they obviously went and had a lot of success in Northern Arizona. They had success before. So it wasn't a broken situation that I walked into that had to be fixed. But me coming in as a rookie head coach, a lot of the guys from the 2021 team chose to leave. They wanted to go back to a good handful of guys went back to play for Dixie because they had played for him before and he had success. So they wanted to go back there. Handful of guys decided to go play with Les and Rob because they felt comfortable with them. And then a handful of guys decided just to go play on other teams closer to their home or whatever. So we only brought back 3 guys from the 2021 playoff roster. So we rebuilt the whole roster. And I think that's the fun part about thinking back on 2021 is all the guys that had success, we recruited them, or we traded for a couple guys. They had some veterans, but we recruited all those guys. We had a bunch of rookies that had a really successful year. So if you look back at that, that's the really most rewarding part is we're able to win more games, make the playoffs again with the whole roster that we had to go out and get.
Amazing. I mean, that's always been the side of the game that's fascinated me, especially at the IFL level. I mean, you got constant turnover. These guys are they're not really signed to long-term contracts, and a lot of them have flexibility after a season. So you really have to be a solid recruiter, I feel, to keep a team together. So that's one of the things that I think is amplified at this level.
Absolutely. They're all 1-year contracts. So everybody gets a 1-year contract. There's some restriction rights and there's some different rules. So our free agency is restricted free agency. So it's not just wide open Wild West, but they all are 1-year contracts every year at this level. So recruiting is important. Like right now, we've signed a couple of new guys, but we're recruiting guys from last year that we want to keep. So we talk to them and we're recruiting those guys. You have to recruit them back. It's not like we signed them to a 3-year deal and they're stuck with us. So I think recruiting is really the lifeblood of an IFL team and a staff. And we don't have giant player personnel departments like an NFL team has that's doing that. It's really the head coach and maybe a couple other guys that are focused on it. So it's a core of teams that have success at this level year in and year out, do a really good job of identifying talent and recruiting.
Absolutely. So while 2022 was your first time as an IFL head coach, it actually was not your first time as a head coach. You actually ran a high school team and a college team. How have you had to adapt at each different level of football?
Each level is different. So when I was a high school head coach, I was young. I was like 24, jumped in, didn't know anything. Was able to turn around a program and help lead them to the playoffs for the first time in like 20 years. But I didn't know anything. I was just doing stuff and going to clinics and reading books and just doing stuff. So I did that. I actually kind of was a head coach at this level. So when I coached for the Wisconsin Wolfpack, our head coach was our owner. It was a weird dynamic. He had a football background, had a lot of success in like semi-pro football. So he was the head coach, but he really didn't coach anything. He just came and told us when to go for 2 kind of thing. So I was basically the head coach of that team. That's where I first coached Corey Roberson. So I had kind of experience of basically running that team. That CIFL is probably more, like CIF or AAL type of level. It's definitely was a step down from the IFL and NAL, but you still get experience leading those guys and guys like that. We were based in Madison, Wisconsin, so we will have a bunch of ex-Wisconsin Badgers. So we had some high-level football players on that team, and we had a lot of success. I think the last year there, before that team went under, we played in the championship game against Cincinnati Commandos, and Billy Back was their coach. Really young, I think his first head coaching job. as well. So I had some experience. Obviously, it's a lot different at this level. This is true professional football, so the ringer's tighter. There's a lot more moving parts, and the level of athlete's better. So the thing about this that what I always tell, especially younger coaches or guys that you get in the business, is at this level, players can sniff out somebody doesn't know what they're talking about really quickly. So you have to know your crap, so to say, to be good. So guys can tell they've all come from successful places in college. They know if you don't know what you're talking about, or they know if you're just here because you're a good recruiter, or if you're just here because all you can do is coach and you can't do anything else. So it's important that you, as a coach, are on your game, are doing what you need to do and watching your film and making sure that your schemes are solid, and you can teach that to guys, because they'll call you out and they'll know right away if you don't know what you're talking about.
I could definitely see that. I mean, that's as much as you're looking at everything that the team offers, the players are too, like you spoke about earlier. So there's definitely some selling as far as the recruitment goes, for sure. Can you describe the feeling you had in your first game as the head coach of the Iowa Barnstormers?
It was an interesting game. So we were not able to practice ever in our stadium for preseason camp. It's just we have a AHL hockey team. We have an NBA minor league team in our stadium, and early on in our season, it's tough to get in there. So we had a road game, the first game. So I had like 17 out of my 21 guys that had never played indoor football in their life. And the first time they set on an indoor football field was that game. So we felt like we had a good team in camp, and we felt like, all right, we're going to come out here and we're going to show Quad Cities that we have a pretty good team. We came out and the whole first quarter was like, pregame, I'm like, this is crazy. This is a coach. I'm a coach. First time ever. It wasn't like a surreal thing. I had been there before, so it wasn't like I was in awe of it. But it was a packed house. It was our first game in 2 years. So they had like 6,000 or 7,000 people there. And we just laid a royal egg in the first quarter. All our guys are big-eyed, like, oh, my God, this is what it's like. And we, like a quarter and a half before we kind of started playing, and then it was a competitive game, but we had dug ourselves such a hole at that point that we lost. And people were probably like, oh, these guys are going to suck this year. Iowa's going to suck. But we were able to come back and regroup after those guys got that experience. All those rookies got the experience of, this is what it's like. Here's the level. Here's how you warm up. And all this stuff, you just have to do it to get the experience. So it wasn't a super surreal feeling. I think more of it was during camp of like, this is it, man. Like you're coaching football. You're not doing anything else. You're not doing anything on the side. You don't have your other career. You're just doing this. That was the more of the moment of, this chance, took this chance. It's working, and you just got to make sure that you win games to keep it working.
Agreed. So I actually took some time and set up a little highlight video I'm going to play for us.
Cool.
So we'll.
Throw 7-yard line. In between the hash marks, left to right they operate. Green AstroTurf field, white markings, letters, numbers rather. Hash marks as DJP takes it, fakes it, keeps himself at the 5, gets to the 10, and fights his way up to about the 12-yard line, moves the pile to the 15, to the 16-yard line.
All right. So as you guys could tell, that was from a couple games in particular against the Green Bay Blizzard, which we spoke about. You are very close with Corey Roberson. So what was it like playing against and beating the Blizzard for the first time? Was it a game you had circled before the season?
I wouldn't say I circle it because there's no negative like connotation from Corey and I. It's not like we left in a negative way. So, we talked about it a lot. Corey's somebody that I talk to on a regular basis. So it was circled more so as a friendly rivalry. But as we progressed in training camp and I looked at their roster, I looked at our roster, I felt like we had a better roster. So I felt like the pressure was on us to win the games we played against Green Bay. So we were playing pretty good football the first time we played them, and they were kind of still trying to feel themselves out. Like their quarterback, they were still playing the other guy. So I felt like that first game, I kind of expected to win. I know Corey expected to win. Corey thought they were going to win. We really expected to win that game, and we won that first game pretty handily. It was nice. It was exciting. Talked to Corey afterwards. There was no hard feelings. Obviously, he wants to win every game he plays, so he wasn't happy about it. But when we talked the next week, it was what it was. But it was nice to beat them 2 out of 3 times. I felt like even the game they won, that might have been the worst game we played all year. So, and when we lost by, at the last second to them, but I think it was nice to be able to beat Green Bay. That's where you came from. So it's nice to do that. If I played Albany, I'd like to beat Albany, it's just nice to beat the team you came from, but there wasn't any like circle or wasn't any extra hype from the guys. And we had a couple guys that we had traded for that kind of had circled it because they felt like maybe they were traded because Green Bay didn't want them anymore. So those guys had a little bit of negativity towards Green Bay. So that was one thing where they maybe had a little bit of a bone to pick with them, a couple guys we got from their roster. But as a whole, as a team, it was just another game for us. And we were on a pretty nice run there going into a bye week. So we really wanted to get that game, and we did.
Absolutely. For the record, I didn't mean there was any negative connotation behind the game.
No.
Just like you said, a friendly rivalry. You always want to beat where you came from.
Yeah, that's exactly what I told him. I said, I hope you recruit your butt off. And we were just talking last week. I said, I hope you go 14-2 this year and just lose 2 games to the Barnstormers, and then we'll play in the playoffs and see what happens.
That would be awesome. It would be a lot of fun to watch for sure. Talk about the storylines behind that game. Cool. In 2022, your team had a tendency to be a bit streaky at times. I mean, you'd win 3 games and then you'd lose 2 and then go back and forth. What are some of the things that you as a coaching staff can do to try and find a bit more consistency?
So for us, that was probably our biggest mark is we lost the first game, and I think that opened up our guys' eyes. We had just all these rookies. We had every game was either like 15 to 18 guys that were rookies in the league playing pivotal role for us, pivotal roles. So that was, I think, the biggest thing is you would win. We'd win a few games, and then all of a sudden these guys would get back to how great we are and we're so good, and we had to get knocked off our pedestal. And it wasn't until our last run at the end of the season where we kind of felt like, all right, even when you win games, anybody can beat you. Anybody in this league can beat you. I don't care what the record is. It wasn't until that. Now we had a lot of injury issues in the middle of the season like everybody does. So we hit our little middle season lull. That was really the injury. We had all kinds of guys banged up. We lost, receivers, and our quarterback, Darius, he started every game, but man, was he in the training room like he didn't even practice. There was weeks he didn't practice at all and just come out and play in the game. He was so banged up. He had a leg thing going on. And so that was kind of the middle of it. But for us, it was just working on understanding how to win in this league and trying to teach them how to win, and then making sure we're smart as coaches in what we do. Because sometimes you have a tendency as a coach to, when you're losing, you want to do more and you want to ramp it up. And I want to hit more, and I want to tackle more in practice, and I want to bang people more in practice. And, at this level, it's not really about that. Like, you don't lose games because you're out physical or you're out athleted. You lose games because guys are not in the right spots. They're making mental errors. So for us, we kind of peeled it back in the middle of the season. We tried different stuff. I think after we lost 2 in a row, what we did one day, we lost 2 games in a row. I don't remember what 2 they were, but we lost 2 games in a row, and I felt like, all right, we got to get the ship righted. We got to get going. And I think it was actually after we lost to Green Bay. So we had Green Bay coming back the next week. So it was a weird week because you're playing Green Bay back to back. So Monday we did our normal film, and then we decided not to practice. We did a little movement and stretching and some yoga stuff, and then we played a game of wiffle ball. We were in the arena. We set up a little field, and we had a wiffle ball thing, and we played a game of wiffle ball just to remind them of like, this is supposed to be fun, guys. Like, I know it's a lot of pressure, it's hard on your body, but you're here doing this because it's supposed to be fun. And then we went out and we beat Green Bay the 3rd time that week, and we got on another little bit of a roll. But it took us all the way to that last. I think we ended the season on a 4-game winning streak, and then we lost to Quad Cities at the end. We had some goofy adversity into that last game, and we kind of knew we were already going to be in the playoffs, so we sat a couple guys for injuries too in that last game against Quad Cities. Worked out good for them because they went all the way to the championship game. Had they lost to us, they wouldn't even make the playoffs. So we sat 2 guys for injuries that could have played if it was a playoff game. But it wasn't until that last stretch where we kind of learned how to win. You know, we beat Bismarck. We won a couple other games. We went out to Tucson and really laid the business on Tucson. But it took us that much time to learn how to win with those young guys. But I do think if we can get that core back in 2023, we could be a pretty good team right away this next year.
I would agree. Like I said, I think you guys are trending in the right direction for sure. When you look back at your career, I know you've had a bunch of different stops and different seasons that were highly impressive. Is there anything in particular as one season that sticks out above the rest?
I don't know if there's one season. You know, winning the championship in Albany was cool, but I wasn't as connected. I was working in the front office, so it's cool, but it's different. You know, you're not grinding every day on the field with the coaches. So, you know, that might have been the one had I actually been on the field coaching for that season. But you look at different things. You know, there's every season has some things that were really cool. I mean, even that 2018 Green Bay season, that first game we won was just awesome. It was an awesome feeling to get that win, and stuff we did this year. That first win in Sioux Falls. I'd never won in Sioux Falls, played there multiple times. I'd never won and beat Sioux Falls, period. And then for us to go there in our second game after kind of laying an egg against Quad Cities and winning was just pretty awesome. And, you know, Curtis Riggs is the best coach ever in indoor arena football, like in history. I'll argue with anybody who wants to about that. I mean, his record is insane. So to be able to go out there and beat him, that was pretty cool. But every season has something that's cool and kind of keeps in your mind. I can go back to every season I coached anywhere of something that was really awesome feeling. So I don't have just one season, I think, but just a kind of a lifetime of memories from each one.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it would be hard to pick any one season with all the different stops that you've had and all the success you've had, I'm sure. So one thing I didn't have on my question list that I want to ask is for players out there that might be watching this, how can they catch your attention? How can they set themselves apart from the crowd for you?
For us, you know, if there's people watching, like I'll tell you this, you know, I get inbox like every single day. So I think the biggest thing for guys to understand who are trying to catch on at this level or any level is you need to look at the team you're inboxing and see if you fit what they do. You know, there's certain styles of guys that just fit certain schemes. So if you're going to inbox the Iowa Barnstormers, go watch a couple Iowa Barnstormers games from last year. Assuming they have the same coaches, that team has the same coaches, watch the game and then truly ask yourself, do I fit into what they're doing on offense or defense, whatever your position is? Would I fit into that? Because I think oftentimes I get inbox from guys and I'm like, this is just not the kind of guy we look for in our schemes that makes sense. You know, it's not always about the guys that have the most success at the professional level. It's not always because they're the best athlete or they're the fastest guy. It's because they fit into a scheme. And if you look at teams that have success, even at this level or up to the NFL, it's personnel people that can find the guys that fit into their scheme. Because you'll see guys like in the NFL that are awesome one place. Like they're so good at a team, maybe as a rookie, and then they sign their big free agent deal somewhere else and they stink. And it's because they're going chasing money and they're going into a scheme that doesn't fit what they do best. So I think that's the first thing is to understand do I honestly think I fit into this scheme of what they do? So that's the thing I would say that the most important is don't just inbox every coach. I'm sure I'm not, like guys that inbox me aren't just inboxing me. They're inboxing every coach they can find on social media or whatever avenue that they're talking to them. But chances are your skills aren't going to fit on every team. So yes, maybe you inbox Green Bay and they say, yes, come to camp, but then you get there and you're just not a fit. Where maybe if you would have gone to the Omaha Beef and the CIF, a little bit lower level, you might have been a better fit and had more success there and maybe then jumped up to the IFL or better. So that's the biggest thing for me as far as how can you get our attention. I mean, I try to respond to most everybody who inboxes me. If you inbox me, I didn't respond, I apologize, but I try to respond to most everybody, give them some feedback, a little bit here or there. And I would say it's not really anything you can do other than that. It's just your film. Your film is what shows what you can do. Like when you inbox a coach or you talk to a coach, we don't need novels. We don't need resumes. Like I can do this or that or this. Like, don't tell us what you can do. Just say, hey coach, interested. Here's my film link. That's your resume. And that shows you what you can do and how that coach can see how you can fit into what they want to do on the field. And that's the biggest difference from, guys who played locally, like high school or even some small college. It's at this level, we're going to go out and get guys that we feel fit into what we want to do. And to some degree, once you get the guys there, you figure out maybe some different strengths and you try to do what you're going to do to their strengths and adjust to their strengths. But it's not like at a high school or it's maybe a small college or even like if you're playing locally in some of those semi-pro type leagues where they're just going to get who they can get and then have to build around them. We're going to go get guys that we think fit into what we want to do.
That makes a lot of sense. Obviously, you were a director of player personnel for Albany, so you're looking at everybody in kind of a GM mindset, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of like what I love coaching, but I think we were at some point there was going to be a question about what is my like dream job or what do I want to do with this? Like if I had the pick tomorrow, if I had the genie in here and Aladdin came in and said, hey, you can pick any job you want, I would want to be an NFL GM. I wouldn't want to be an NFL head coach. I mean, if that's where my career progressed as an NFL coach, cool. But I'd rather be a front office guy and a personnel guy. That really what excites me a lot. I enjoy doing that, and I think I'm good at it, so it helps. I think I have a track record of being able to identify guys that fit at least into my system. Doesn't mean I could go coach for Sioux Falls and be able to pick guys that fit into their system. I don't know, but the stuff that I do. And when I was in Green Bay in 2019, I recruited my whole offense. Like those were all my guys that I wanted. Obviously, Corey had to sign off on them because he was the head coach, but I went out and got guys that I wanted to fit into my scheme. So I think I do a good job of that. And then, in Barnstormers, we don't have a really major player personnel department. So it's really me and a couple guys that help me do a couple things, but I think I'm pretty good at it. So.
Agreed. That's very interesting, and I could definitely see you as a GM. You obviously do have the acumen of recruiting and bringing in players for a scheme, so that would make a lot of sense for sure. So a couple more questions. Your team makes the playoffs in your first season as the head coach with the Barnstormers, but you're tasked with facing the top-seeded Frisco Fighters. What are you telling your team headed into that game?
We felt like we could play with Frisco, like without a doubt. They're a good team, but they won a lot of really close games this year. So we didn't think they were unbeatable. We had some crazy adversity the last week of the season that Major League Football really messed us up. We lost 3 starters to that nonsense. So, if there's anything I could go back and do different was try to convince those guys that Major League Football was going to be a mess, but I couldn't get it through their head. So, we had 3 guys. We had, guys starting his first game ever against Frisco in the playoffs, that offensive line, and playing his first game ever. But I think, Frisco was obviously a good team, had a great roster. Billy's a great coach. He had a great coaching staff around him. So that was tough to deal with. And their just margin of error against a team like that is very small, which is why I think they won so many close games because they had all those veterans and veteran coaches that had been there before. So you almost had to be perfect in order to win. And we had a great first quarter. We had a great beginning of the second quarter. We laid an egg about 5 minutes in the middle of the second quarter, and all of a sudden we're down 25 points, 22 points or whatever. And then third and fourth quarter, we kind of traded punches, but we could never, when you're down that much at that point, you can't, you need to get some stops and you need to get some turnovers. And we tried a bunch of onside kicks. We couldn't get any of those. So it was really a 5-minute stretch that hurt us, but we went into that game feeling very confident, feeling like we could beat them, we could play with them, we could win. And it just was a matter of about a 5-minute stretch in that second quarter where the wheels kind of fell off and we couldn't put it back together.
It definitely happens, especially in the arena game. The game can get away from you very quickly if a couple things roll certain ways. We have a question in the chat from a guy of mine. This interview has been dope. I hope the Barnstormers have open tryouts because I would definitely love to be there. So are they having any open tryouts this
offseason? Yeah, we definitely will have open tryouts. So I think we're still trying to figure out when our facilities are available. What we signed 2 guys from our open tryouts last year. One guy didn't make it. He ended up going to play for a couple teams in the CIF. So he was a rookie and he got getting in with us in training camp allowed him to go and play for some other teams. But one of our guy ended up being our starter, Chris Robinson, maybe our best defensive lineman, came from an open tryout. He had a pretty great background. He's the all-time sack leader at Morgan State University. So he wasn't just some guy hanging out like, let me go try this out, but he drove all the way from Baltimore to Iowa, and he was just killing guys in our open tryout. I'm like, who in the hell is this guy? And he came and he had a really nice season for us. And he's actually, he's getting some talks from some higher leagues, and he's talking to some USFL people. So we shall see what happens with him. But it could have been a thing where he goes from not playing. He'd never played indoor before. He was in a couple camps and didn't make it, and going to play for us, playing the whole season, leading us in sacks, our best defensive lineman probably, and maybe he's going to go play to the next level. So we definitely will. Just keep posting on our website. We'll post all that stuff on social media once we get a date here. It'll be sometime in the next couple months.
Definitely. I will make sure to share that when it comes up. Hopefully we can get some guys on the squad because definitely you've got a solid roster, but I'm sure there's always pieces to be added. So I want to talk about film sessions. How much do you spend? How much time do you spend watching film on an opposing team prior to a game?
A lot. I mean, that's a vital part of understanding what to do in the game. So scheme-wise, at this level, there's only 8 players. There's certain restrictions on what guys can and can't do with the rules, depending on the league. So you're not necessarily watching it to understand the scheme. Everybody kind of runs the same stuff, the same offenses. There's some teams are a little different than others, but it's generally the offenses and defenses are really similar. The key is to try to understand when somebody's going to call a play and what tendency can be built. So that's the key to watching film, is watching to try to understand when something's going to be called. So when is a team going to call this play or that play? And then just watching the technique of guys. So if you're watching film on a guy, I think that's one of the things that some guys at this level went through college and were so good, especially when you get guys from smaller schools. So if you get a D2 or a D3 or NAIA guy at our level, he was probably just the best guy at his school. He's probably such a great athlete that he maybe didn't even need to watch film because he was just so good. So we get guys that don't necessarily even know how to watch film, and it's important to teach them how to do that. But hours-wise, it's hard to say. It depends on, have we played this team already? Has their personnel changed? But you're watching for understanding when they're going to call something, and then watching the technique. If you're defensive end and you're the right defensive end, you're going to watch their left guard, and you're going to watch the game and just watch how his feet moves. What does he do when you beat him off the edge quick? What does he do when you do a power rush move? What's his go-to move when you go an inside spike move? So then you can be prepared for that when you do it and have your next move off of it. And the same thing, if you're wide out, like, what does a DB do when I run a go route on the sideline? When I break his cushion, how does he turn and run? Is he susceptible to double moves? Is he a squatter? Does he want to squat and stuff so we can get some interceptions? And that's the stuff that really film watching is key for, especially for players, is understanding how the guys are going to do things. And that's stuff you can't hide that on film. So if you're a guy that does this or that on film, you're going to continue to do that unless you're coached out of it, but it's not going to happen like immediately. So film wise, we watch film as a team every day. So we practice and then we film, whether we're watching our practice film to correct our own stuff or we're watching game film. Some days we watch both, some days we do one or the other, but we film every practice and we're watching that. And then guys go home and they're watching film on their own too. So something that they're doing. We have outside film sessions with the quarterbacks, and I will sit down and watch additional film in the evenings over dinner a couple days a week. So it's a valuable and important part of the game at any level, but it just, as you rise up in levels, it becomes more important because, like I said, you're not losing games on Saturday night generally because people at this level, people are just bigger, faster, stronger than you. There are some guys that are just elite, and there's different levels of people, even in the NFL, but it's the mental stuff that ends up causing you to lose games. So that's where film comes in and understanding how to watch it and actually watching it and being able to digest it.
That makes a lot of sense. So I had two more questions for you, but we kind of already covered one. Obviously, that was the future question. What would you like to do as a dream job? So the last question I'm going to leave you with is tell me about some other players on your roster that we might not know about that you feel have what it takes to make it at the next level of football.
I think we have quite a few guys that are probably being considered. We had a really young team. We had a lot of small school guys in our team last year. So, we had two guys make the all-rookie team. I think I kind of felt like we got screwed on that a little bit, but we had two guys make the all-rookie team. So those guys for sure are Antonio Wimbush, a running back, and J.R. Stevens, a defensive back. They were among the league leaders. Antonio missed 4 games. If he didn't miss those 4 games early in the season, he got hurt in the second series against Quad Cities, that first game, which also kind of hurt us a little bit because we didn't bring a backup running back for that game. So we were playing our backup quarterback at running back the rest of the game. But, if he didn't get hurt, he would have been probably leading the league in rushing, if not right behind Darius. So Antonio is a guy he just had an XFL workout 2 days ago, private XFL workout. So he's getting looks right now. And he's tough as hell. You watch the highlights. He's good. JR was among the league leaders in interceptions. Great career at Indiana, University of Pennsylvania. So those two guys are getting looks. And then obviously our quarterback, I can't speak enough about our quarterback. I love that guy to death, Darius James Peterson. Everybody, the first thing they say to me is, "Oh, can you get a bigger quarterback?" Or, "I wish Darius was bigger." Like, if Darius was 6'1", he'd be playing in the NFL. So the fact that he's 5'10" and a half is why he's playing at our level. But he's super dynamic. I think he could play in the NFL. I think he's that good. He could be in the right system. He could be that Taysom Hill kind of guy where he's a backup quarterback and he's playing some running back and he's returning kicks and he's playing slot receiver. I think he'd be a phenomenal slot receiver. He's a 4-4 guy, high 4-3 guy. So he's a blazer and he's athletic and he's agile and he's got good wiggle. So, Darius James Peterson's fantastic. But we got a bunch of guys that I think coming back this year could turn some heads. Cole Carter, Mississippi State offensive lineman, 6'7", 305, had a great rookie year. Ian McBurrow, our middle linebacker, got banged up in the middle of the year. I think if he didn't get banged up, he'd have been all rookie team because his stats would have just been outrageous. He was near the league leaders in tackles and tackle for loss till he started getting banged up. He sat that last game, so that against Quad Cities because he was so banged up. Titus Howard ended up coming and having a great year for us. Hadn't played because of COVID for a while. Had a cup of tea with the Chiefs, but then nobody else signed him. Cornerback, long, lengthy guy. Don McNeil, rookie guy, had a great success. So I think we have a lot of guys on our team that if they can make another progression, so they obviously made enough progression last year as rookies, if they can come back and make another progression of that first or second year jump, will definitely be on radars. I think at our level, oftentimes it takes 2 or 3 years of sustained success for leagues higher to come take a look at it. Obviously with the XFL and USFL and CFL all fighting, there's going to be more opportunities for guys than there has been in years past. But it generally takes a couple years of success at this level for those teams to take a peek at you. So I think most of our guys will maybe get some looks. Maybe one of them get lucky enough to get a camp offer or something. But I think the majority of our guys have to come back and prove they can do it again a second year. If you look at some of the guys who've gotten out of the IFL to the Canadian League or whatever, it's been that second or third year where they got their first opportunity to go somewhere. So, we got a lot of guys that are going to be in that discussion coming forward.
Definitely agree. I love how you put that. It does seem to take a couple of years of success at the IFL level before they do ultimately get the looks elsewhere, like we saw with Daquan Neal or Aaron Dilworth.
Yep,
Who
Dilworth.
signed up
There you go.
So with that being said, Coach, I really appreciate you coming on. It's been a lot of fun talking to you. I definitely will be watching the Iowa Barnstormers a little bit closer next season to see how you guys do, and ultimately, hopefully, see you guys in the playoffs once again and a deep run.
Yeah, that's definitely the plan. You know, we're building that roster right now. We're talking to a lot of guys and trying to get our core back. But if we can secure that core back of guys, and you know, all those guys I talked about, and you know, Jordan Baldwin and Justice King, and just a whole bunch of guys, and Keyslow Smith coming back, and get those guys back, and sprinkle in a couple more, you know, really good rookies or a couple other veterans, I think we could be in the mix for championship contenders.
Agreed. One of the things I did want to say before we get off of here is, if you didn't catch the highlight video, I'm going to play it here in a second. We spoke about DJP, the quarterback. I don't think height should even come into the consideration because you watch him play and he's just amazing. So.
He's an amazing dude, man. I think he kind of got a bad rap for not getting Rookie of the Year. No offense to the Duke City guy or you know, the guy in Northern Arizona is really good, but I mean, Darius passed for 2,000 yards, ran for 900 yards. If you had seen the injury he played with through about 4 games in the middle of the season, there's nobody else in this league that would have played, let alone did what he did. So if you take out those 4 games, he was killing it in the beginning of the season, killing it at the end of the season. He passed like 250 yards in that playoff game and ran for like 80. I mean, come on. He is a freak. He is one of the best players in this league, and I think if he does come back this year, he'll be an MVP candidate for sure.
I would agree. Well, it sounds like you got some kids to get to, buddy, so I'll let you get out of here. I really appreciate everything. Once again, it was a lot of fun talking to you.
All right. Thanks, my man. Appreciate it.
Have a great rest of your day.